Meet me in the foyer.
Now, a review that might seem familiar, but is in fact a directorial debut from Sarah Friedland, featuring a cast I'm not familiar with, but that's no criticism. Let's find out if Friedland has the touch. But don't worry, all touching is consensual. So, Linda, are you familiar with the familiar touch?
Well, I mean, Sarah Friedland is a first-time director, so it's completely normal that you've never heard of her. So don't feel too bad about that. Kathleen Calfont, or I think it's Calfont, is a really, really famous stage actress, and she's
Hmm.
been in Broadway, and she's done a ton of stuff on Broadway, and she's like, a really very respected actor. So like, and I know she's done more stage than she's done film, but if you asked anyone in New York, they would tell you that she's one of the greatest actors of all time.
Hmm.
So she is really well known. So this feels like a film you could almost see in it feels extremely European, it reminded me a bit of do you know if any films from the Dardenne brothers who are
The
a
name's familiar.
yeah, they are like a filmmaking duo from Belgium who've been making movies like this for a very long time and sort of winning awards throughout the whole career during the festival season. So, and really well known for broaching really important stuff and doing it in a really non-obvious way, the handheld cameras, cinema verite, very like unassuming filmmaking, but filmmaking that is really impactful regardless of any of that. So, as I say, a debut feature from Sarah Friedland. So, the center stage of the movie is this character played by Kathleen Chalfant. And she plays Ruth, a woman navigating the early stages of Alzheimer's disease. And she's the first time we see her, she's in her home, and she's obviously someone who is very much into the arts, very much into like, she's a kind of like upper middle class uh woman. I think it's set in New York, but I'm not sure. It never really tells you where they are, where she is. She's
Hmm.
really well spoken. She's obviously an older woman, and there's tons of books around the flat, and there's like art, and she's like delicately making breakfast for two people. But you get this, uh, you suddenly get feeling that something is not quite right. But she is basically moved from her home to a assisted living building by her son without telling her, because he probably had told her before, but she has forgotten, and she doesn't want to be there. She's stubborn, and she's the first thing she says to the whoever wants it was to the people trying to help her is, I'm not like those other older people. I know what I'm doing. I understand what I'm doing. You don't need to help me get dressed. You don't need to help me eat. But what she doesn't understand, actually, she spends the first couple of months or couple of weeks in that place thinking she's in a hotel, or like just she's on holiday, and she goes and sits in the canteen where she is presented with food, and she says, "Oh, but I didn't order this. Can I have a look at the menu?" So you can get a feeling that she's a woman who's so independent, who's spent all her life being independent, very strong-minded, who finds herself having to adhere to whatever people have planned for her for the day, because she can no longer look after herself.
Hmm.
Physically, she's fine, but mentally, that is, I think, the sadness of Alzheimer's disease is that it's when it first starts, it's very like it's not very noticeable because people still carry themselves physically normally, and you don't realize they are slowly sinking into the disease until it's too late. And I think that's what's absolutely devastating about this story. So I really, really, really loved the way this was filmed. As I say, I was comparing it to the Dardenne brothers before, and I feel like the Dardennes have made tons of movies that very similar to this. But I mean, they have dedicated their lives to talking about working class communities and but this feels very much in that way is that the subject of Alzheimer's, of senility, of of getting old, of you know and the way our society in the West treats older people is kind of devastating, because if you presented this story to anyone who is not from the West, you know, anyone who is from sort of Asian or African societies, they will not understand why we
Mm,
have to pack the whole house of our parents and grandparents and put them in these institutions, regardless of how well presented they are and how well they're looked after and how expensive they may be. Because this, obviously, she's a woman who's had money in her life, and her son is more or less selling the house from under her. And he's not doing it out of maliciousness, he's doing it because she is no longer able to look after the house or herself or anything. She can't remember who she is. She can't even remember who he is at one point. And when he suddenly calls her mum, she's like, "Why do you keep calling me mum?"
mm,
I just think it's very rare for a filmmaker at the beginning of their career to be making movies this well formed. And
mm,
it just I was absolutely like I gave this movie 5 out of 5 stars, because I just think it would take a filmmaker maybe 20 years of work to get to the point where she is. And you can't really, you wouldn't even tell that this is her first movie. Yeah, I she understands the way we see people and the way we see people. And I feel like, that kind of like a show don't tell. And I keep saying show don't tell, and and it gets boring sometimes, but at the same time you feel like so many people have forgotten the art of show don't tell. Do not keep repeating. I think show don't tell is and we don't always have to use show don't tell. I think in mainstream cinema you can actually spoon feed your viewers, because you are presenting a movie to different types of audiences, and it's fine to sort of be that way. But in these kind of small movies that are more likely to have a different kind of audience, you want to do as little as possible when you are telling the story. You just want it to play out and in a normal fashion, in a really slow fashion. And she manages to do it. The performances here are really just wonderful, I think. So as Kathleen Chalfant does a really fabulous job, and you really believe that she is Ruth, and you believe that she's someone who's losing her memory. Carolyn Michelle Smith plays nurse Vanessa, who works at. I don't know if actually she's a nurse. I think she is someone who she's a carer
mm,
who works for this the old people's home. And then you've got Andy McQueen, who is Brian, who is the local doctor, who both him and Vanessa play this kind of game around her in a nice way, as to not freak her out about where she is and what she's doing. And H. John Benjamin is Steve, who plays her son. Yeah. All in all, this is really a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful movie. It's slightly depressing. I mean, so I would like, if you're feeling a bit down and not completely well this month and mentally, I'd say leave it until you're feeling better to go and see it.
mm.
But I just thought it was so well done, and very impressed by it. Yeah, really, really
Wonderful.
like this.
That sounds like a potential recipient of some award nominations.
I feel like it might be. Yeah,
Mm,
I feel
mm,
like it might be. Um, Yeah, I mean, I've not seen a single bad review of it
mm,
personally, and this isn't a film I was at all aware of. I don't even know when it came out or when it was I think it was at one of the festivals. Oh yeah, hang on. Yeah, it was at Venice last
Mm.
year, or the year before, even. Yeah, I think it was at Venice the year before, actually. And it's very depressing when you see movies like this, really wonderful movies with great acting and great direction, that struggle to get a release a whole year and a half, almost 2 years after their premiere. So it's good that it's coming out now. Let's put it this way.
Yes. Yes, because I mean, according to online sources, it came out, as you said, I mean, it was in Venice in 2024 and it came out in
Yeah,
America last year.
yeah,
And it's just finding its way out here.
yeah.
Hopefully, it gets a wide enough distribution to garner an audience,
Oh yeah, yeah,
which
it
good.
will. It will, and it's getting some really good reviews from like really well-known critics. So I think that will be a really good sort of counter programming
Mm,
option for people who don't want to go and see all the big movies
yeah,
of the summer. And you know, it's got it's aimed at a certain demographic, but I just think it's a movie for everyone to see.
fabulous. Well, that's the first option if you're heading to the box office this weekend. Lovely. Thank you very much, Linda.
Thank you.
Meet me in the foyer.